And last time I was in Hong Kong, I was giving a speech, very high level. The Asia Society was hosting it. And somebody took me aside and said, Jim, be careful what you say. The sequence is currency wars, trade wars, shooting wars. Shooting wars solve the problem. Mass mobilization warfare, destruction of capital, 50 million dead, very good for the labor market, very good for construction, very good for recovery. Not a great way to get there. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's talk a little bit about the trade war. A lot of people say, well, this started in January 2018 because Trump put tariffs on solar panels and appliances, your refrigerators or whatever. Well, yeah, you could say that, but I would say the trade war started in 1994 when China did a maxi devaluation of the yuan, continued through 2001 when they made a bunch of promises to join the WTO, World Trade Organization, and broke every single promise, continued through the early 2000s when they were manipulating the currency, and continued through 2016 where they were admitted to the IMF special drawing right basket of currencies, one of only 5, and lied to the IMF because they said we'd have an open capital account, and they shut the capital account the following year. So what he did in 2018, I view as the U.S. finally got the wake-up call and retaliated. Here's the globalist mantra, and this goes back to the 1990s, and whether it's Richard Haas, Jeffrey Sachs, President Clinton, President Bush, many others, it's a long list of people. They said, look, we understand that Chinese are communists and they're kind of bad actors and they do bad things, but if they're willing to embrace something that looks a little bit like capitalism, they will grow richer. They will grow more sophisticated. The education level will go up. We will accommodate that by letting them join the World Trade Organization and the IMF, even though we know they lie, cheat, steal, because they will eventually get rich enough that they will be just like us. They'll throw off their communist masters, embrace a Western model, and it'll be just like Europe. We're all on the same team, democratic, quasi-socialist, but democratic, capitalist, liberal, in quotation marks, societies, and China will be just like us. That was the theory. I said it was wrong at the time, and time has proved that correct, meaning they're just rich communists. I said the only thing worse than a poor communist is a rich communist. And so we have created rich communists at the expense of our own workers, at the expense of our own economies. They are not like us. They're more communists than ever. Communists, atheists. The human rights violations are incalculable. If you're a Uyghur, maybe a Muslim Uyghur, or a Catholic in China, and you express any dissent at all, you'll be arrested. You'll be put in a concentration camp, indoctrinated with communist philosophy. Maybe you'll get it, maybe you'll fake it, maybe you won't. But for those who apparently don't get it, they're strapped to an operating table without anesthetic, and their organs are removed while they're still alive and sold to the organ tourism industry, this huge multi-billion-dollar transplant industry in China, and then they cremate the bodies. That's real. And what does that sound like? Killing innocent people and cremating the bodies? Have we seen that movie before? So that's who, I don't know why we do business with China at all. So that's who you're dealing with. They're not getting more like us. They've elevated Xi to, first of all, president for life. There used to be this, you got two 5-year terms, and then in your second term, you kind of announced or anointed your successor, who would then pick up the reins at the end of your second 5-year term. That process was, which is driven by consensus, was working very well and giving China a little bit of stability. Xi tore it up. He's in his second 5-year term now, but he did not announce a successor. And at the last National Party Congress, they changed the rules so that he can stay on indefinitely. So he's president for life. They also created something called Xi Thought, which is a big deal because it elevates his ideological musings to the level of Mao thought. He's only the second Chinese leader to get that designation. All the others, okay, you're president of China, head of the Communist Party, whatever, but they were never treated on a par with Mao. Xi is. So we have Xi Thought. We have, gross human rights violations, geopolitical confrontation, near war in the South China Sea, testing the boundaries with India, all the, intellectual property theft, lie, cheat, steal through the economy. Their numbers are fake, by the way. I'm sure you've heard of something called Goodhart's Law. Goodhart's Law says, when a metric becomes the object of policy, it loses meaning as a metric. So in other words, if you compute your GDP honestly, it's valuable information. It tells you what your economy is doing. But the minute you target GDP as a matter of policy, it loses meaning because you're just manipulating to a result. That's what they're doing. And this is a big deal because U.S. companies are watching this now. Apple's although Chinese value added in the iPhone is about 6 or 7%. 100% of the cost of an iPhone is treated as a Chinese export and a U.S. import, but their value added is only about 7%, give or take, because they buy the Gorilla Glass they buy from Germany, the circuits they buy from Japan, they buy other components from South Korea, so they have to pay as much as they get, and then they're just assemblers. These are Lego-style assembly jobs. And don't underestimate the extent of the poor working conditions, slave labor, prisoner labor, some of the things that go into this.
Okay.
But American companies are getting the wake-up call, they're getting the message, and what they're doing, this is a very big deal, they're moving the supply chain origin to Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and these are 10-year decisions. You don't move your factory from China to Vietnam and then move it back next year if things are good. You keep it there. Again, these are major fixed assets, major long-term investments. So if you move it out, you're not coming back, maybe ever. And so these are permanent losses of jobs to China. And their GDP is overstated, grossly overstated. My adjustment gets them down from, round numbers, from about 6.2% to maybe, a little under 4, 3.8 or so, but I've seen other scholars whose opinion I respect say it's more like 2.5%, and some say 0. Okay. So China is, the growth slowdown is abrupt, it's material, and it's getting worse. And so what'll happen is Xi's status is now at risk. I mean, okay, he may be president for life and Xi thought and all that. He may be the most powerful leader since Mao, but the Cultural Revolution got a little bit out of control for Mao too. And so the Politburo, they're gonna be careful, but they may get rid of Xi at some point. Or you may see social unrest. You may see Hong Kong writ large. And Hong Kong's not going away. That situation's not getting better. Well, first of all, China will invade. They kind of already have. They haven't sent in the People's Liberation Army, but they have an armed paramilitary police force. They're already in there, and they'll do more. The violence will get worse. The social unrest will get worse. I've been gone to Hong Kong for 35 years or more. It's interesting. If you had asked me in the early '80s, and when I first started going to Hong Kong, just describe Hong Kong, I would have said, well, it's the second most vibrant city in the world after New York. New York would always be number one, but nightlife, energy, finance, attitude, everything about Hong Kong was just, amazing. Every time I went back there, and I was there last year, it got worse. It got more subdued, people got more depressed. And then in the 2000s, I could really detect the funk. It's like, we're here, we're working, we're a financial center, but this is no fun. And, we're kind of looking over our backs. And the last time I was in Hong Kong, I was giving a speech, very high level. The Asia Society was hosting it. And somebody took me aside and said, Jim, be careful what you say. And I had never heard that before, not in Hong Kong. I mean, someone might have said that in Beijing or Moscow or someplace, but not in Hong Kong. So, and I said what I wanted anyway. I was getting out the next day, but it's bad. Well, it's obviously bad because there are violent demonstrations, and a few people have died and more may die. But that's going to get worse. That genie's out of the bottle.
Okay.